Hello everyone, I'm Kalen North, and today we're going to be talking about basic strategies for the spirit Bringer of Dreams and Nightmares. Bringer is a fear-focused spirit, with some control and defensive abilities as well. However, they're probably best known for their inability to destroy invaders, generating fear instead. Bringer is a major-focused spirit in most of its builds, going top track, because its bottom track is frankly underwhelming. We'll be doing a slightly slower build of Bringer for this video. One build for Bringer is to simply gain a major on turn 1 and use that major as much as possible to try and just win the game by rushing fear, or control, or whatever it is that you get from the major deck. However, I think it'll be a little more educational to talk about a slightly slower Bringer strategy in which we use their control and defense elements a little bit more. Without anything else then, let's hop into it. Alright, we start in the sands, and the invaders are starting in the sands this time. So, first turn, usually I like to take either growth 3 or 4, depending on whether I need the extra range from growth 4. If I can get away with using growth 3, I like to take a minor early on with this build. That gives me some more options, and there's a lot of things in the minor deck that are pretty good upgrades over your starting hand. A lot of the defensive powers are better than Dread Apparitions, for example, and almost all of the damaging powers are more useful than Predatory Nightmares. They don't always have as good of elements for us, but there's still good utility in trying to gain something from one of those decks. So I'm going to open up here and actually gain a minor power and see what we can grab. Savage Maw Beasts can be useful. It doesn't have great elements, but it can pick off explorers and generate a little bit of fear in jungles and wetlands. It being slow, though, makes it really hard to use effectively, especially because we can't stack it with other cards to take out towns or cities. Visions of Fiery Doom is nice in that it has that moon element for us, and it can push and control the invaders a little bit in our land, plus generate some additional fear. It is a little overcosted for what it does, though. I'd rather not take it most of the time if I can help it. Gift of Living Energy doesn't have good elements for us at all, but it does have a very nice effect, potentially, of letting us get more of a support role, generating energy either for ourselves or other spirits. We are often going to make at least a couple of sacred sites, and so we'll be hitting that kicker on the bottom half of the card. But again, kind of underwhelming here in solo. Bringer has a fairly good top track and is going to be able to get lots of energy. And Steam Vents is almost strictly worse than Visions of Fiery Doom for us, because it has worse elements, and for us, destroying is pushing, and Steam Vents doesn't generate any additional fear. So here, although I don't really feel that much enthusiasm for it, I am going to take Visions of Fiery Doom. I think it's the best pick we have available to us. Next, we're going to go ahead and add a presence from the top track. And we could go into land 6 potentially with our invaders. Normally I'd grow to where the invaders explored, but this time they explored to us, and so it's slightly less important. I'm going to actually grow to land 4 so that I have an adjacency with lands 2 and 3. That'll help us get in there next turn if we want to gain a power card again. But for the time being, it doesn't make too much of a difference to us to be in there or not, to be in land 6 or 1 or 7 at the moment, so land 4 I think is going to give us the highest utility. This turn, in order to try and take advantage of the card we drafted, I am actually thinking about playing Visions of Fiery Doom. The only reason I wouldn't do it is because I'd want to play it with Predatory Nightmares for the kicker if I could, but that's not going to actually work for us because we don't have the 3 energy to do that, which is surprising for Bringer. Usually we can afford all of our cards. As such, instead of doing that, I'm going to play Dreams of the Dahan and Predatory Nightmares. Dreams of the Dahan will let us gather some Dahan into a land, probably land 5, to set up for a counterattack against the explorer and potentially town that'll be in there. Predatory Nightmares will let us either move that town or else shoot the town in land 6 for extra value. We could also potentially hit some explorers in, lands 4, 7, or 1, but that's something we'd have to think about doing once we see what the explorer actually is. With powers, I like to always start with Spirit's May at Dream. Turning up a fear card can change what I do with the rest of my turn. I know some players like to look at fear cards later in the deck because they tend to be more impactful. But in solo especially, I don't think it's as big of a deal because we are going to be relying on the fear deck pretty heavily anyway. It's nice to know, even if it's a minor effect, what's coming up. So defend 2 in all lands with presence. That's a good reason for us to put Dahan in land 5 where we have presence already and just not worry about getting rid of the Explorer or the town. So I'm going to use Night Terrors there, and then I'm going to use Dreams of the Dahan there to gather in 2 Dahan. Invaders build in the sands and explore in the wetlands. So now we have a couple of options for what we do with Predatory Nightmares. We could hit the town in land 5, but because of the fear card that's coming up, we've got land 5 solved already. I could shoot land 1 and prevent the build there entirely, putting that Explorer either in land 2, land 4, or land 6. But that doesn't generate any fear for us, unfortunately, and it does mean that we build a city in land 6. Building a city in land 6 isn't necessarily bad. We can take the Blight early on, and if we have a city there, we can use that as a fear farm. Whenever we can deal 3 damage to that city, we can generate 5 fear, and that's a really potentially nice thing to have. However, I think that I'm going to try and play this game a little lower to the ground and try and avoid city builds, so I'm going to use Predatory Nightmares on land 6, hit the town, and I'm going to push that town into land 8, where there's some Dahan. Next turn, I want to gain another power card again. We could go ahead and use our 4th growth option to get some energy and potentially try and start slinging a major this turn. But because we have that fear card coming up that's going to give us defend 2 in all lands with presence, I'm thinking I want to just grow into land 3 and solve both of our ravaging lands that way. In which case, I'd like to see if I can get another power card from the minor deck that's going to do something more useful than playing, say, Dread Apparitions, which is a bit of a dead card in our hand right now. So gain a minor power. All right. Sap the Strength of Multitudes, great defensive card. Same with Drift Down into Slumber. Either one of those would be a solid pick. They're both, in some ways, upgrades over Dread Apparitions. Drought is a nice power to have sometimes. If you can hit the 3 sun threshold, especially to destroy a city, we're probably not going to be able to do that, though. So it's a lot less appealing, especially because of the Blight adding. And then Rouse the Trees and Stones is kind of nice and interesting because it will let us shoot towns for fear and push explorers. So then we can push the town and the explorer out of the land in order to fully solve a land with it. This turn, because I don't really want to play Dread Apparitions, and I'm thinking about going for a major with Call on Midnight's Dreams, because Visions of Fiery Doom also doesn't do too much for us if we grow into land 3, I'm thinking I'm going to take Rouse the Trees and Stones and use that alongside Call on Midnight's Dreams, just to see what happens. Because Rouse the Trees and Stones will easily solve one of our 2 wetland problems. Alright, then grow from the top track again into land 3, so our fear card will take care of the defense for us. And then Call on Midnight's Dreams and Rouse the Trees and Stones. Alright, Night Terrors, we're only getting at the 1st level this turn, but that's fine, gets us a fear. Call on Midnight's Dreams, I'm going to use and try and gain a major power and see what happens. Alright, we've definitely got some interesting options here. So Terrifying Nightmares, excellent control power, excellent on Bringer once we can hit that 4 moon threshold where it generates 6 fear on its own, and it's got good elements for hitting our innates to begin with as well. Rapid Wings of Sunlight is a good defensive power. We've already got presence in lands with pairs of Dahan, so we could use it to pretty much immediate effect next turn in order to start solving and blocking ravaging lands. Infinite Vitality is useful potentially. Stopping Blight is good, and giving the Dahan the big health boost can be really good for solving lands where they're going to be dealing 5 or less damage. However, it's not going to be nearly as appealing as something like Rapid Wings of Sunlight, which also gives us Dahan mobility. Talons of Lightning is an expensive card, but it's one that can deal 5 damage and generate 3 fear. For us, dealing 5 damage can equate to as much as 7 fear if we're able to hit a land with a city and a town in it. So Talons of Lightning is does cost 6, which is quite a bit, but that potential for 10 fear from one card is actually really, really nice. And on the board we're playing on, we do have a city in a mountain, so that's even more tempting because of that. For me, this is really a decision between those three. I think Infinite Vitality is pretty easy to scratch from the list for me. But with what we've already got going on for us, I'm really thinking Talons of Lightning is what I want, just to try and get that big hammer of fear. We're going to be able to get a town into land 2 to make it even more appealing, or potentially even group everything into this wetland in land 1 or land 6, and then shoot it all with Talons of Lightning. Terrifying Nightmares I also love a lot, but it's less appealing right now just because we've got the board under a reasonable amount of control, and really I'd rather be getting the major fear generating going on when Terrifying Nightmares is still going to take me another turn or so before I can really turn it on to its best use case. So I'm going to take Talons of Lightning. I'm going to go into my discard and forget Predatory Nightmares. Even if we forget Call on Midnight Streams, we're not going to be able to afford Talons of Lightning this turn. So I'm going to forget something else instead and just save Call on Midnight Streams for a future turn. All right, Fear card, we get that Defend 2. Our Sands Ravage and Clear. They build in the wetlands, and they explore in the mountains. All right, that's really nice, actually. So we're going to rouse the trees and stones, hitting the town in land 6 and pushing it to land 1. And then I'm going to push the Explorer from there into land 8. I could push them into land 1 or into land 5, but I'm not as enthused about doing that right now just because I'd rather group them up here where there's some Dahan already. This turn, I am going to take our 4th growth option because we need the energy to be able to afford Talons of Lightning. We're going to go ahead and finally unlock that Moon element, which is nice. And then play Talons of Lightning and Visions of Fiery Doom. Visions of Fiery Doom is mostly to get us that air element and that moon element, and then that extra 2 fear from pushing something. So, we'll finish playing cards. Spirits May Yet Dream. Let's see what the next fear card is. We can push things from an inland land. That'll be great. That'll solve land 7. Night Terrors is only at level 1, unfortunately, but that's fine. And then Talons of Lightning, we're going to hit land 1, dealing 5 damage and generating oodles and oodles of fear. So we now have 3 fear cards this turn. And I'm going to push everything into land 2. This is going to let them build another city there, potentially, if we don't use Visions of Fiery Doom to push a town out, which I'm actually going to do. But having 2 cities in a land as bringer is actually really beneficial, because if you can start dealing 6 damage, then you can be generating 10 fear just from those 2 cities. However, we've already got something pretty good, so I'm going to move that town instead and let them build another town. All right, invaders do not build in lands where Dahan outnumber cities or buildings. That's not too useful. Each player may push up to 3 from an inland land. That is much more useful. It'll let us push that to there. And scapegoats, we get to destroy some explorers. Invaders ravage in the wetlands, build in the mountains, and explore the wetlands again. All right. Now for this turn, what I really want to do is I want to try and set up some kind of counterattack in land 2, just because we're getting close to Terror level 3 and I can get rid of that city. I'm not going to quite be able to generate enough energy income in order to play Talons of Lightning again, which means that we're not going to be able to just get that massive fear boost right away. So instead, I'm going to try and use Dread Apparitions alongside something from our discard pile, probably Dreams of the Dahan, to set up a defense. And actually, no, that's not going to get us enough defense. So, never mind. This turn, with us low on energy, I'm going to actually just reclaim cards. Gaining a minor power this turn, just because we are running a little low on energy at the moment. So, we've got a few options. Lure of the Unknown could be pretty nice here. It has good elements for us. It would let us stop a build in lands 1 or 6. Quicken the Earth Struggles is pretty nice. It's got good elements again. Unfortunately, we don't have a Sacred Site in Land 2. If we did, it would be perfect for us. That Defend 10 is really nice. Shadows of the Burning Forest has okay elements for us, and generates some of its own fear, but that pushing out of a mountain or jungle isn't going to do too much for the time being. Entrancing Apparitions could be really good, actually, solving lands 1 and 6 simultaneously by dragging the explorers into land 5. So I'm thinking I'm actually going to take Entrancing Apparitions and do that, and we're going to just let land 2 go. I was thinking we could do something where we play Dread Apparitions and Visions of Fiery Doom in order to generate an extra fear and push out the town. But I think that we're going to be better served by solving lands 1 and 6, losing the presence, and taking a blight here. Also very useful if, for example, Blazing Renewal comes up later on to have some destroyed presence. And it's not going to be very hard for us to get presence into that land again in a future turn. Plus, on top of all that, this way, we can probably play Talons of Lightning again next turn for another 10 fear by hitting land 2 with it. So, I'm going to use Entrancing Apparitions to solve lands 1 and 6 by dragging them into land 5. And then I'd really like to use something with Moon and Animal to try and get that Innate maxed out. In that case, that would mean playing Call on Midnight's Dreams, which is pretty good for us in terms of, if nothing else, we can generate a lot of fear. We could also use it to fish for another major, potentially, and see if we can get something useful to defend land 2, for example. So, Spirits May Yet Dream we'll use first. I'm going to check the top fear card. Each player removes a town or explorer from a land with Presence Disc. And then, as far as elements gained here, I normally like to gain another Moon in case Call on Midnight's Dreams triggers something like Terrifying Nightmares, but I know that Terrifying Nightmares is in the discard pile already, and so I think that it's a bit of a crapshoot as to what we gain. I'm going to go ahead and just gain a Water. I don't know that it makes a big difference, just because we don't have that many options left. Night Terrors, gain some fear. Entrancing Apparitions, go here. And then I'm going to call on Midnight's Dreams, and I'm going to gain a major. All right. Entwined Power is very useful, especially in the early game, for just filling our hand up, and it has Moon Element, which is nice, and it's cheap, which is also nice. But we're not going to threshold it, and we're not playing multiplayer, so it's less useful at this point. Pillar of Living Flame is like a cheaper Talons of Lightning in some ways, where it generates as much fear and is potentially really, really good with that. But it is also slow, which is less appealing. Vengeance of the Dead isn't really going to do a lot for us. It has okay elements, but 3 fear and its effect are just not all that good. Land Thrash's and Furious Pain, on the other hand, could be very useful, especially if they're about to blight in land 2, because then we can use it to Shadow Destroy the city and generate Oodles of Fear again. So I'm going to go ahead and take Land Thrashes, forget Call on Midnight's Dreams for 2 energy, and then go ahead and play it. Alright, each player removes a town or explorer from a land with presence. I'm going to get rid of the town in land 3. The amount of stuff they have in land 2 is just too high anyway at this point. Alright. They blight, they don't build, and then they explore in the sands, which is fine. So now let's use Land Thrashes, and we'll deal 3 damage to the city for 5 fear. And now, if we could have gotten rid of that city, it would have been really nice, but as it is, we're going to just gain energy and play Talons of Lightning again, because this is going to generate so much fear that we're going to get very close to winning, if not actually just win outright off of it. The only other card I have energy for is Dreams of the Dahan, so I'm going to go ahead and play that. I will check a fear card just in case my math was wrong. In each land, defend 2 per Dahan. That could be very useful on a future turn. But Night Terrors, Talons of Lightning, and that should be enough, I think, to get us Terror level 4. And we just win the game. I guess we push the town first. But yeah, that's Bringer of Dreams and Nightmares. They can do quite a bit. They are a little heavily reliant on RNG as far as what you get from the major deck, but I do think that they have quite some potential for rushing Fear and being a good team player as well, as need be. Thank you for watching. If you have comments, questions, things you disagreed on, please let me know in the comments section below, and hope to see you next time.